I want to just kind of honor in a way that even though many times we think, oh, well, if I reach this place with my consciousness, then I should be able to bring back all wisdom. But that's us talking in this body and in this consciousness. When we step out of body and begin to work within that, there is an awareness that our consciousness pretty much remains the same in some levels. But that as we move through the different dimensional planes, we begin to have the awakening and the awareness of, oh, I know who I am. Oh, I know what I'm doing. Oh, I understand more. And then from that level of awareness, many times there is a sense with an awareness of your guardians, your guides, or whomever you're working with, that it's not appropriate to actually bring some of that information back to Earth. And I know that sounds so weird. It's almost kind of like, well, we should have the right. We should be able to do this and that. But there is just certain levels that I feel like we get to surrender to this higher level of interconnectedness, of what it would be like to truly work within the consciousness of a council. Because again, a lot of the desires that we have for accessing things, knowing things, tapping into things, having our gifts and abilities, and knowing what our purpose is and how should we live our life, is all very self-serving for us as individuals. And I'm just going to say that just as an awareness. This is an awareness I have to monitor. This is an awareness that I invite all of us to monitor personally. That, yeah, there's a soul spark within us that pulls us to do the work, right? But at a certain level, we do have to be super mindful. How much of this am I actually inspired to do because I actually am doing this for humanity and for planetary consciousness and for universal consciousness? Or how much of this am I doing because I want to know? And that's the tricky energy within there. So now I'm going to take it to another energy of existence, of understanding our different bodies that we work with. And I want to come back to this book, The Goddess Sekhmet. This is again called The Psycho-Spiritual Exercises of the Fifth Way by Robert. Let me just do the cover on here, Robert Masters. And so he goes into detail of the practices that were done, and primarily through the energy of what are the subtle bodies. And so I just want to touch into these very, very quickly. That it is very much known that the Aufu, which is the physical body, that it is very much something that is a mechanical energy. It's a biomechanical creation, right? But that it's meant, if it is standalone and all by itself. So this is where we get to start to expand our consciousness to go like, oh, this is why it's important to come back into my body. Because there's part of us that's aware that this is actually a living aspect of the earth body of mother. There's another aspect of us that's aware that this body that we're wearing right now is actually one of the most advanced technological vehicles within creation, and that even very advanced races don't even have bodies that are this resilient to this many things. And so that's why there's so much effort from so many different star races that are constantly adding to, working with, we call it hybridization programs. But a lot of this is the constant upgrading, modifying, perfecting, guiding, and leading of this physical body for its purpose of maneuvering through future timelines and to have a resilience to survive in order for the evolution of our consciousness to continuously grow in this form. So there's an awareness that our body is actually quite special. It's not just some meat suit that a lot of different beings, like a lot of different empaths and light workers, sometimes refer to their body as, which is so degrading. And, you know, I have to also acknowledge all of the times early in my journey where I felt trapped by my body, limited by my body, as though I was even imprisoned within this body. And so therefore made my body wrong. And I think in some ways that's why my soul actually drove me to, without even understanding why, saying, you're going to learn how to do body work in this lifetime. You're going to do hands-on physical body work, and the body is going to be the one thing on your menu in this lifetime that you're going to absolutely focus on until you learn to actually respect it. And it's so funny because it's like, you know, I did massage therapy and all kinds of different body work techniques for a massive amount of my life. And it was really when I started to bring more of that love within there that it was now saying, okay, let's start to move into the subtle body. So there really is, you know, the journey that I had to go through is really for me to hopefully be the gift here to impart to you the importance of your physical body and to come back into loving it, and for us to come back into bringing it into harmony. And I'm going to be the first one that raises my hand when I can say I still let my mind override the best good of my body, and I'm still continuously putting foods and things into my body that later I'm going like, oh my gosh, that totally hurts. I shouldn't have done that. Where I'm realizing I'm completely limiting the potential of my internal organs to be their highest vitality and vibrance in this life. So now, as we understand the physical body, again, this is actually one of the ways in which we are intending to connect it to all of the other bodies, and that they're meant to all be as one, almost like the doll inside of the doll inside of the doll. We want them all to be as one. Now, that's this physical body. So as we look at this, the body itself, it's running more on instinctual consciousness and subconscious consciousness. What that means is that it has base programs or consciousness that it's running that is going to be more in alignment with natural law than our brain, but it's also very much influenced by our subconscious mind. And our subconscious mind, for the most part, is a horrendously negative place because it's primarily embedded with a lot of the distortions from our ancestors and our past histories of humanity on Earth. And so that's why we end up doing a lot of shadow work and clearing work within this lifetime. Now, as we work with this body, we're going to realize that its true purpose is then to begin to merge its consciousness with the subconscious or the shadow world. We're going to look at it with the Ka and the Afu. So now we're going to go, so the Afu is the physical body, then we have the Ka, which they refer to as the body of experience. Now, think about experience. The experience is going to be what we think of as our body double. But when we talked about how our subconscious or our nervous system actually did a freeze response, so it's kind of like we're not in our body, it's another way of how we can look at how our mind works. When we think of our Ka or this body experience, it is about the place that is connected to our mind, how our mind thinks. And truly, our mind is the person who we think we are. We live in our head, we live in our mind, we live in who we think we are up here. And that is one of the most detrimental places for us to be, because it actually has its own kind of autonomy where it thinks it is the body. So, for example, I'm definitely a lot more mature in my body these days, and there are times where I want to do something, but I maybe haven't done it for a really long time. And so if I jump right into doing it, in my mind, I still think I'm 20. And I'm just going to jump right in and I'm just going to do it. But then my body says, oh, you haven't checked in with me for a while and you forgot to stretch today or to do any of the things that were necessary for you to actually be in sync with me. And you are not that young little whippersnapper that you think you are in your head. So I want to play with this a little bit so we can actually realize there's tons of ways in which we have an impression of who we are in our head, but it doesn't match who we have actually integrated ourselves as within our body or integrated ourselves with as in our shadow body or our next body layer up. And it's the three base primary bodies that are the most important, I think, for us to work with. Because unless we get really connected to the physical body, the afu, the physical body, the ka, the mental body, and then the ku, the magical body, or sorry, the hadith, which we're going to look at as the shadow body, we actually don't have the ability to really move into the next two bodies, which are going to be spiritualized bodies, without distorting the energy all the way back in. This is where we lose our memories and we forget, or we don't have the ability to actually move our consciousness out and then maintain that energy. So just in the same way that we physically work out our muscles and our body by working out and having strength and flexibility and resilience and muscle memory, I want to really tap in muscle memory. This is the same way we want to develop each of our spiritualized bodies, because then we start to have the awareness of how to work with them, how to exercise them, how to make them stronger. So the Ka body, the double body, it's really interesting because it's known as a false aspect of who we are, because it sees itself as one way, but it's really that aspect of us that lives in a delusion or lives within our own head. And that what we want to do is we actually want to start to begin to integrate it in. How do we start to integrate it in? Well, the interesting thing of how to integrate it in, I'm going to move into the next part, because the way to really truly integrate it in is actually to work with the physical body and the shadow body, and then kind of sandwich the mental body. It's not like we're doing a ladder straight up. It's more kind of like first step, come into mindfulness, presence, and absolute lucidity within your own physical body. And then begin to work with this energy of the hadith. So let's look at the hadith. The hadith, or the shadow, can roughly be identified with what presently we call the unconscious, including some of the collective unconscious of humanity. It is the body which the unconscious is experienced, and the unconscious is its world. So this is really important for us to understand, because this is kind of a realm where this is really where a lot of times we're traveling in our dreams. And this is where we're working things out within our dreams, seeing the dream symbols. Why did this show up in my dream? Why was this happening? Why was that happening? Why did I go here? And why did I do that? Because a lot of times what we're doing is in our dreams, we're running around in this hadith realm. And we're running around all over our subconscious mind and the unconscious mind of the collective of conscious. And in there are all of these shadows. And most of the times what we're trying to do is just stay in the happy, fluffy places within this place, rather than understanding that this place has so much wisdom for us to actually go deep into flushing out all of our deepest fears within ourselves. This is why I love lucid dreaming, because in a lucid dream, you can start to call to ask, what's the biggest thing what's the main thing I'm most afraid of? And if you are brave enough to yell that out to your lucid dream, first of all, kudos and high five to you to get in there. But I will tell you, it will show up. And it will feel real. And it will be fearful because you just asked, what's the main thing I'm afraid of? Well, when it shows up, your whole lucid body is just going to light up with a massive amount of fear. And now what do? Who are you going to be? Are you going to face it? Are you going to talk to it? Are you going to actually, with non-judgment, be present with it and begin the transformative process of changing that fear and integrating it into self in some way? Or are you going to just freak out, wake up, or run away? So this is where we get to really utilize this realm, because they're saying unless we master this realm, we're not actually going to even understand where most of our mental plane is coming from. And so as we begin to work with integration within this, that it is the shadow realm where we begin to work out the massive teachings of our ancestors, what they told about the realms of the realms between chaos and order, that the entire universal fields and dimensions in many ways are constantly in this whirling of exchange between chaos and order, chaos and order, chaos and order, and the balance between there. And it's actually when we can start to step through this, through these unifications, that's those thresholds again that we go through, that we begin to find ourselves embracing all of the places that we have felt powerless, and then starting to step into the understanding of expanding our consciousness to how the mental plane works, how we can work within the shadow realm and now harness the mental plane in order to begin to command it within that space. And so it starts to actually use the Ka and then eventually the Afu in order to begin to live our full purpose, where we are so mindful in our waking life that when we go through our day, that we can be completely mindful and present within our body, which means we're actually not daydreaming while we're driving our car. So now we're so mindful in our body that we're also mindful of our thoughts and where our thoughts are coming from. And we're allowing ourselves to use that clearing process, which actually starts to say, show me the place of origin, where we become so masterful of catching every nuance within us that it pulls us into the deep subconscious of our mind, so we can actually sense, know, and be aware of on our subconscious level where all is manifesting from, so that we are moving through this plane of existence, not haphazardly, not by fate, but by knowing ourselves and where all this is coming from. So when we begin to really master this level, this is where we actually start to learn mentalism. This is where we start to learn our power of commanding our space and our voice. And from here, that as we kind of move through this is definitely just a reminder, this book is in the members section that you can go through and read it. But that within this is where we actually start to learn the powers of mentalism. And one of the primary ways that we start to work with it is through bending time, working with time. We start to understand this really more of the fourth dimensional plane and the timelessness, or the way time actually just functions differently within there. And that through our mind, we can actually travel at the speed of thought to whatever it is that we are choosing. Therefore, we start to step out of the realm of physicality, that I have to walk everywhere I'm going, or that I even have to fly everywhere I'm going. Although if there was a choice between one or the other, I do choose flying. So if you're in one of these out-of-body experiences or even lucid dreaming, definitely don your wings and fly. It's much funner. But within that, there's also an awareness that time isn't linear. And I've talked with you guys before about within lucid dreaming, actually being within a lucid dream and just for the aspect of going like, oh, well, I didn't like how that outcome came, but I was fully lucid, fully aware in my dream. And within it, I was all like, oh, well, since this is a lucid dream, I can actually rewind and rewrite and do a different outcome. And these are the ways in which we get to actually realize that when we are connecting to our guides and the higher planes of existence, they do not see our reality in a linear aspect in the way that we do. This is very much why many times, like just even our last group together, we were talking about how sometimes you will be shown things now that you might not be asked to recall for another 10 years or another 20 years. Because again, they are orchestrating things many times. And when I say they, we can just say our higher self and our own physical reality is orchestrating things, but it's orchestrating things from a multi-timeline perspective. So it's placing into our timeline exactly where things are needed in order for trigger events to happen for us. And when we can begin to sense that, we can start to see the fluidity of how we really will get to a place of not needing to do the shadow work that way that we've ever done it in the past. It doesn't have to be long or arduous or going through any of this. But it does require mindfulness. You have to actually acknowledge it. You can't just be like, oh, well, there it is, so I don't want it to go away. That would be great, but it doesn't quite work like that. There's still an awareness that you have to actually do the intentions of taking your awareness to the different timelines and actually seeing the quantum spectrum of it in order for the shift and change to come forward. And this is where, again, we want to get out of any places of, well, I'm just going to vibrate at this level and I'm not going to worry about that. It's awesome. You know what? It's not a wrong way to do things. There is no right or wrong way. That's what I always like to say for the quantum healing journeys that we do. There is no right way, there is no wrong way. But I will give this invitation out there that if we don't make the effort to go in there and actually free up all of our past childhood traumas or the things that have been embedded within us, it's physics. It's going to be in your soul field, and you're probably going to end up back here in this reality or a reality like it again. Bottom line. It might not be in this exact plane field, but it's going to be a charge in our field. There's going to be something that on a soul level is going to call us back to be with it again. And I don't know about you guys, but I have a very aware remembrance of a lot of the things that happened in my childhood, and I'm a no thank you to doing that again. I'm just like no, you know what, it was great, I appreciate it, yeah, I learned a lot about myself. I'm pretty good with that, so I'm willing to actually do the effort in this lifetime so that I don't find myself going like, oh shoot, I forgot that. Okay. So therefore, anything that you find resistance to, hesitation to, a sense of wanting to even be busy with something else. This is something for those of you that have done sessions with me around the clearing work or anything like that. We all know this, right? How many times has it been like, okay, well, yeah, the clearing process seems so simple, but then we go off on our day to do it, and then stuff comes up, and then it's kind of like, I just don't, maybe later, or there's a visceral resistance to doing the work. I get this feedback a lot from people who are just learning the clearing process, and they're so jazzed and so excited, and they're like, yeah, I got this. And then they're like, it's so weird, it's so simple, but it's almost like something comes up to resist wanting to look at the things and do the work. And the moment something like that comes into our reality, where we almost feel ourselves wanting to go numb to it, disassociate, not pay attention to it, get distracted, like, oh, well, that doesn't matter, because the next thing that comes through is our mind comes through and it says, well, I don't need to worry about that. I'm okay. I'm doing this and I'm fine. That is us not allowing ourselves to be truly honest, mindful with ourselves. And I say this with all sincerity, because it's like, yes, this is something that I love teaching and sharing, as far as sharing the clearing process with others. I've been doing this for over 20 years of my life, and I'm still doing it. I'm still, I want to just be really transparent with you guys. It's like, it's like this energy that it just feels as though, even though it should be like, oh, well, yeah, I've processed everything I should process about my childhood and that. And if I find myself just saying like, well, that just doesn't bother me anymore, I don't want to think about it, it's not a big deal, I don't let my childhood affect me anymore, I'm going to invite you guys to catch any language that's like that, because that is a red shining light that says you do have something there that is still asking to be loved. And it's just an invitation. It's just an invitation. And again, it's not about this long, arduous process. It's just having the ability to witness something,